I'm Elton Sherwin, and this is the Bible and Homosexuality, Part 4, Men Lying with Men in Leviticus. Previously, we looked at the first two of what are now called the clobber verses, scriptures used to condemn homosexuality. Neither was about consensual homosexual relationships. Today, we look at the next two clobber verses. When talking about homosexuality, if you hear a new pastor or a young life leader say something like, "There are just two scriptures I can't get over," they are most likely referring to these two verses. Young Christians frequently agonize over these two scriptures. Clobber verse number 3, Leviticus 18:22. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. Clobber verse number 4, Leviticus 20:13 is even worse. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall be put to death. Wow. In English and out of context, these verses seem very damning. Well, first, let's look at the context, and then next time we will look at the Hebrew. Leviticus bans over 70 items, including cursing your parents, death penalty for that, mistreating foreigners, selling land, mixed fiber clothes, planting different types of seeds in the same field, not standing in the presence of the elderly, and working on the Sabbath. It's a long list. Think how history would have changed if Christians had followed the Levitical laws when dealing with indigenous people. Your Bible says the land shall not be sold permanently. How about a 49-year lease? Think of the difference it would make if the indigenous peoples in North America still owned all their land. Most churches today ignore all the dietary laws and most of the other rules in Leviticus. Christian churches claiming all homosexuality is forbidden ignore most of the adjacent verses. They don't believe the selling of land is forbidden. They don't believe cursing your mother or father should be punished by death. And they don't believe mixed fiber clothes are sinful. So what makes men lying with men different? Why must we keep this part of Leviticus, but we can ignore most of the rest of it? There's no satisfactory explanation. It appears to be cultural. How do you choose which Levitical laws to follow? Do not hold back the wages of a hired worker overnight. Every church I've ever known ignores that. Do not trim your beards. Pretty much universally ignored. A priest is not to marry a widow. Wow. He is to marry a virgin from his own people. Well, let's see. The Catholics ignore the part about marrying at all, and the Protestants pretty much ignore the part about not marrying widows. And then the foreigner residing among you shall be treated as your native born. Wow, never heard a sermon on that. Even among the churches that believe that all male homosexual acts are sinful, they follow one Levitical rule on homosexuality and they ignore the other. So the must obey is you shall not lie with a male as with a woman. But they universally ignore the part about they shall be put to death. It's a high bar for the Bible to condemn all homosexuality, to claim that all homosexuals must abstain from all sex, never marry, forego all leadership and teaching positions in churches. There'd have to be a pretty clearly articulated theology on how and why to ignore most of Leviticus, but not the 2 verses on homosexuality. There is no such clearly articulated theology. How do you know which parts of Leviticus to ignore and which parts to follow? Well, the denominations cannot agree. The Southern Baptists don't agree with the American Baptists. The Presbyterian Church in America doesn't agree with the Presbyterian Church USA. The Anglican Church doesn't agree with the Episcopalian Church. The Lutherans don't agree with the Catholics. They simply cannot agree on which rules in Leviticus should be followed and which ones can be safely ignored. It's a house of cards. The inability of pastors and theologians to explain why 2 obscure verses should be law, but most of the rest of Leviticus can be ignored. It undermines the entire case against homosexuality. It drives young people away from the church, and it drives some LGBTQ Christians to suicide. There is no biblical case against homosexuality without these 2 verses. Why do I say that there is no biblical case against homosexuality without these 2 verses? Well, as we saw previously, the first 2 clobber verses were not at all about homosexuality. And similarly, we will see in upcoming episodes the 3 New Testament verses used to condemn homosexuality refer to temple prostitution, sexual orgies, and human trafficking. None of the other 5 verses address consensual homosexual relationships. Next time, join us as we uncover more problems with these 2 disputed verses. And then we will look at the 7 LGBTQ affirming positive scriptures. And even if you have attended Sunday school all your life, even if you have attended divinity school, these scriptures will likely surprise you. Until next time. Click here for the next episode.